Sports arenas and stadiums have been transformed into polling sites to mobilize voters to get out the vote. Somebody who's very familiar with that, Lisa Leslie, is our next guest. She is a 4-time Olympic gold medalist, 3-time WNBA MVP. And Lisa, it is great to have you on. Certainly a very timely discussion here because we have seen sports leagues mobilize in a way we haven't seen before over the last several months. You've certainly been instrumental in that effort as a former athlete. I'm curious, as you look to tomorrow, what is your hope? I mean, what would you consider to be a successful outcome on the back of all of these efforts?
Well, I think, like you said, having the opportunity for so many people to get out and vote and go to the arenas, we've seen an unprecedented number of voters already doing early voting. So I'm really happy with that. I just think people having the opportunity without voter suppression, having places where they can go and vote and get their vote cast, that's what's most important. I think that's what America's all about, is protecting our democracy and allowing people having the ability to get out there and vote. And it looks like the numbers are showing that people are doing that. The most voters we've ever seen. When you think about it, I've been a part of More Than a Vote, and just recognizing that 40% of voters are new, 18 years and over. So that whole new group that has this first opportunity and their first experience to vote, watching them get out there and vote has been just as important as well.
At least, I mean, when you think about that too, I mean, obviously it's coming in a year when there's been a lot of discussions, particularly in the sporting community and athletes, when it comes to having their voice heard. And obviously we saw that play out in the NBA bubble and elsewhere. But now you're seeing this incredible resurgence of people actually voting now. What does it feel like as a player to see that happening in this discussion in terms of 2020 and really having this voice be heard now? What does that feel like as a former player?
You know, for me, I think it's interesting the way that most people, especially in the African-American community or in underserved communities, their understanding of voting was not quite what it is now. I believe voting seemed almost like a part of when you had civics class. And if you were interested in politics, you'd really get behind it. Otherwise, you had no interest. And then you had the idea that your vote didn't really count because your voice hadn't counted. I think now with social media, we've been able to educate so many people and to help them understand the urgency of it in such a mass way through our own voices and media that we've been able to reach our own people and really educate them about the importance of each individual really getting up, getting your aunt, getting your uncle, getting Big Mama, Grandma, anybody, and getting them to the polls. And I think we also have to be so thankful to the millennials and Generation Z who've really participated and pushed even parents, even those who aren't old enough, making sure and checking on other people. So I think we've really been able to educate people more than ever about the importance of their voice, their votes, and having their voices heard by using their votes. I think the second part of this is going to be, okay, tomorrow we don't know what the outcome will be, but the fight and the start of where we are, it just begins. No matter who wins, we still have so much more to do in terms of understanding about when we don't just vote every 4 years, being a part of educating yourself, getting your family together and figuring out what public officials are representing the voice that we need in our communities. So I think it's been an awakening in a way that we've never seen before. And hey, the pandemic obviously slowed so many people down that made us all sit and stop. We've had so much social unrest that's also been a part of us being able to see it clearly. And I think it's just really been these three things and the debate. I mean, it's like so many things happening that, yes, it's been very stressful. I think it's tough on our children, so much to bear. But also it made us look at ourselves clearly in 2020 and look at ourselves. Who are we? Who are we as a people? Who are we as a country? I think it's really forced us to reflect on who we are, and hopefully we'll see what happens tomorrow. But either way, we have to keep pushing and keep fighting for one another.
It's also been interesting to see how the athletes themselves have learned from it. You look at the NBA players, for example, how many have registered, Shaq coming out and saying that he's going to be, or he cast his ballot for the first time. The WNBA has certainly been a leader in this push for social justice. Beyond this season that just wrapped up, what do you see as the role of sports leagues in continuing to push this message? Is it going to have to take a backseat in the upcoming season because it's not so front and center, at least in the headlines?
Well, it really depends on what's actually happening. I think the fact that we are, again, I know the young kids say woke, but it really is a sort of depends on what's happening in the country at that time. But I feel like the platforms are what's most important, and we're recognizing how to use them in a way that is helpful to everyone, not just in our country, but around the world. And so we have to use our platforms, and we recognize that it's going to be important. So I can't say, when the WNBA began and the NBA begins, it really depends on what's going on in our country and how they're going to use their platform. So social injustice and justice and awareness, it may be gone, it may not be gone, depending on what's going on.
And Lisa, another issue that you've really been focused on is the issue of parenting. We had the CEO of Bright Horizons on earlier talking about the struggles of working parents as they try to juggle everything from home right now. What have you learned in the process, and what specifically are you doing to help out some of these moms, working moms who are trying to find that right balance, knowing that this pandemic is going to continue and they're going to have to find a new balance at home?
I've learned, one, that we as moms have to give ourselves a break, and a break in a way, for me mentally, sometimes if that means just a bubble bath or just telling my kids, look, I got to go in my room and just watch TV alone. Sometimes, like, you need those moments alone to be able to man the ship, if you will. But for me, with my kids, being able to help and entertain them, I became a TikTok mom because I had to meet my kids where they were and figure out what was going on in their lives daily, what made them smile and happy. And so TikTok was one of them. My son's a huge, he's been playing with Lego sets since he was like 4. And so we got in touch. I partnered with Lego for my son, who they have an amazing game, Lego Super Mario. And what's been great about that is it's very competitive, which I'm come from a very competitive household. But it's helped him to still continue to be creative, to build. You can take some of your old Lego bricks and still add them to this new Lego Mario. So that's been so fun for our family. And then just figuring out other things, board games, from the Monopolies of the world to playing chess and going out front in the front yard and jumping rope with my kids, like really going back to the basic old school, sitting down at the table and finding ways to connect with my children in ways that we probably didn't do it before, to be honest, because we were just rushing around and going from one activity to the other. So the pandemic really put the brakes, I think, on parenting. And then the last part is just our careers. I mean, for me, the last time I was on the plane was really when I went to Kobe's funeral, which was February. So I usually am in LA, I'm in New York, I'm in Atlanta, moving and working from home. Thank God for Zoom and these microphones and these cameras. I've been able to do broadcasting and public speaking. I've been doing Cameo. I launched my podcast, Front and Center. So it really is about sort of redefining yourself in these moments and figuring out how we can continue to still create income for ourselves and work. It's been a crazy trying to balance it all.
Oh, well, you've got a lot on your plate. Appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Lisa Leslie there joining us. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.